I'm just so glad you guys are here. It's going to be an awesome day. Last Sunday, Pastor Natalie brought a really good message. As always, we want to encourage you guys to go back if you missed a Sunday, if you've missed a couple, whatever it is, it does not matter. It's that you guys are just choosing to be a part of this. And one of the things that we want to do, the time that we take in writing sermons and all that stuff is not just to like be clever or come up with the good stuff. We believe these words. We believe that this can help you. And so getting the regular rhythm of putting that like a Sunday message, a teaching into your life, man, what that does dividends into your life as you go into your week, helps you restructure and kind of reframe what your goal is. And so if you ever miss a Sunday, you don't need to miss a Sunday. We put the recordings up on YouTube. If you want to see our pretty faces, that's how you go see that. Otherwise, download the podcast, Spotify, Apple, all of that good stuff. But Pastor Natalie brought a message. I ended last week's message with a quote from John Mark Comer saying that the way to do formation, the way to go through discipleship, the way to become more like Jesus is that you have to follow a three-folded like step. And it's not really circular. There's no like, it depends. The entry point can happen whenever, but really what it looks like is you need to get some sort of teaching in your life. Now that could be a Sunday morning like this, or you could have a regular Bible reading practice, or maybe there's an author that you really enjoy their perspective on God and that can speak to you and you want to read those books. Whatever can kind of give you a new idea, not just rest on previous ideas. Or because to be honest, like some of the stuff you were maybe taught as a kid was framed as a kid. Maybe you went to a youth group and you were framed that as a youth, but now you're an adult. Some of us, a few of us that aren't. And now you're a parent, or now you're married, or now the kids have left the home and you're looking for the next step. So now you're running a business. Now you're in college. How does the Word of God interact with that? How do you adjust to that? And so get a teaching in your life. Then don't just learn things because that's nice, but then you're just filling your head with a bunch of knowledge. And then where does that go? Like where does that put to? And so what he encourages us then is to practice those things that we are being taught. What we try to do here at Dwell is in those Fridays and upcoming Tuesdays is to give some weekly practice to be able to do this type of stuff. The last thing he said is the safe place to practice that teaching is in community. In community, and when I say community, maybe a lot of stuff comes up in like your mind. We all grew up with different forms of community. Some of us are from some small towns, and so community was the entire town. um, like you did like the fair and everybody showed up, and then people from the surrounding areas all showed up, and then you did barn parties. Come on, some of my western Nebraska here, I brought that up and you already are hungover. Some of us, we grew up with a more tight-knit group of people. We had family members. I grew up, my parents kind of both left their families of origins for a lot of different reasons. And so whenever they got married and they had kids, they created a brand new family. Wallace meant something completely different. And so then they formed this community. And then as they became pastors, they brought in all these people. And so I have people I call aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters that don't share the same blood, but they're family. They're my community. We've now done the exact same thing. Dwell was a practice of that. It was, hey, could we make a larger community than just the people that we know, but the people you know as well? So the people that you've called family, can we all become one big family under the umbrella of God's kingdom? What a beautiful thing that it doesn't have to be just one person deciding what this looks like, but we get to all come together. I love that. Yet we have all these examples, but yet we are living in one of the most isolated times in all of history. We have more access to community. Some people call social media their community, or they have similar interests. Maybe you have a music artist or something that brings you all together, and we have more access to community. Yet we are completely isolated in our world right now. What most people call community is just like associations. Like I participate in something. But participation is the lowest standard of community. Just showing up, it's good. It is a standard. Your presence makes an impact. But what do you do with that then? Where does that go from there? And so, whenever you have the perspective that community is just a once in a while thing, or I'm just participating, you can negotiate with your brain on the importance of you being there or not. You can negotiate with, well, I'm not that big of a part of this community because I just show up, but I don't do anything else with that. Can I challenge today? And today's going to be a little bit of a challenge, what we've called community in our lives. Now, I want to show that there is a better way to do this. God gives us an example of what community is supposed to look like. In a Gallup study of 100,000 adults in all 50 states, the surveyors asked, did you experience loneliness today? 20% of the pollers said yes. Now, if you don't think that 20,000 people is a lot, when scaled to the population of the United States, this number goes from 20,000 to an estimated 52 million. And again, if you still don't think that that's a lot, realize that these 52 million people all around us are making decisions that affect your daily life. Because they might be husband or wife or child, or they might be coworker. And because you maybe don't feel lonely, but that person that you work right next to you, and you might have some sort of perspective that proximity isn't loneliness, but for them, proximity has nothing to do with loneliness. It's a mindset that they're in and they're caught up in. And that affects the way that you work, right? We've all experienced that in some form or another. In 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, the Surgeon General declared loneliness as a life-threatening epidemic in the United States, and it hasn't moved out of that state. We are in a life-threatening epidemic called loneliness in a time when we have the most access to community. This is strange. This is something that we need to wrestle with. So, this is why at Dwell Church we say this: life is best done together. You guys with me today? Come on, life is best done together. Let me know that you guys are with me. I know it's a sleepy Sunday, but come on, it's going to be a good Sunday. I got a word. Life is better shared. Come on, we learned that when we were kids, right? Share your toys, just not your cars, right? Community is about real connections and everyday moments. We are committed to doing life together. We are committed to doing life together. What we're going to be speaking here today is our solution to loneliness. Although 20% said that, yeah, I experienced loneliness today. If I can tell you from a pastor's perspective that one of the benefits and hardships of being a pastor is people open up to us about some of the truth in their lives. I think many of us lie to ourselves, but for some reason, and maybe not for some reason, when you get to talk to somebody that has no judgment on your life, that allows you to open up. Suddenly the guard can come down and a little bit more of the truth can come out. I know this is an example for my mentors and my pastors. I have a therapist that the moment I get to walk in that door, sit down for coffee, do a text message, I know I don't have to put up that veil of, no, everything's going to be all right. Instead, if I can be honest, what I hear as a pastor more often than not is I just don't have anybody in my life. I want to speak to that today because I believe that although we've talked about your presence makes an impact, and we've talked about formation and being a part of a group that helps you go on that journey, community has a depth to it that I want to talk about it. God has a plan for the orphan, the widow, and the wandering spirit. In the Bible, it says that God sets the lonely into family. This is his path. This is important. Has anybody here ever felt like alone? Not just like lonely, but actually alone in a room by yourself at a time in which you don't want to be by yourself. Can I share my example? It's not sad. It is kind of sad, but it's not really sad. I'm a pastor's kid. And so my parents and would my dad had to be at church much earlier than my mom ever did, so they drove separately. And then my dad, he was the youth pastor, which means he had to do all the dirty work. So he had to close up the church at the end of the service on Sunday. And so one Sunday, before we went off to our Sunday lunch at Golden Corral, come on, anybody, Golden Corral people in here, did buffets get worse? Okay, I didn't know if it was just me or if my taste buds as a kid were just really bad, but like I'm talking about Golden Corral in the 90s, okay? Some of that mac and cheese, that butter mashed potato, sliced turkey, fried chicken, come on, the good stuff. And then I won't, okay, unless it's Asian or at a casino, I won't touch a buffet, okay? Those are my only qualifiers. Yeah, but no, I don't want. Listen, I like pizza, but buffet pizza is the worst pizza, okay? Because they just gotta shove it out. Like, yeah, I'm just saying, okay. And unlimited dessert bar. Come on, like there's that doesn't. I don't even think buffets even have that anymore. I used to. Okay, this is such a tangent. I used to make dessert nachos. Here's what I mean by this is you remember at Golden Corral they had those little thin brownies like that's on the tray. So I would get those, put them on the plate, then top it with ice cream and sprinkles and gummy bears and M&Ms and M's and all the things of why I'm fat now. Like I'm paying for it from then because I had the metabolism to go run. Like now I'm like, jeez, but I still want dessert nachos. Um, that's my okay. Never mind. Okay, tangent. So, anyways, so we were waiting, and we got to wait for everybody to get out of the church. 90s evangelical church. That means everybody's there, speaking in tongues, laying on the ground, throwing tambourines all over the place, blowing horns. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're fine. So sometimes we're there pretty late, and I'm just like, I want some lunch. I'm on a clock here, mom and dad. But we would lock up. But in the meantime, my twin brother and I, we would go and play hide and seek. Now, a couple weeks ago, I talked about how I am a hide and seek expert because I am small and used to be skinny. And so I could fit into all the small spaces and all that stuff, and I was extra quiet and all that good stuff. But have you ever played hide and seek and you haven't heard anybody even come around you in a little bit, okay? And the mind starts racing of, did they forget we're playing a game? I'm so good at this. Did they quit and I am just the ultimate winner? And so you start kind of peeking your head out a little bit just to see, like, can I hear anybody? And I couldn't hear anything. So I was like, you know what? Ultimate winner here. I'm going to walk out and be like, you guys couldn't even find me. I'm so good. Come on. You guys better just make me be the seeker. But you don't want to play that game because I know all the good hiding spots. Like, I was going to come out all cocky. And so I was hiding in our sanctuary. And then when I get out of there, I go to the lobby and nothing, and lights are off and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, they must be in the church offices. Mom and dad are probably in my dad's office. So I go over to the church office and no one's in there. The lights are off. And it hits me. Everyone I know has been raptured. And if you don't know what that means, again, you're fine. So 7-year-old Eric thinks he's alone. And all the sins that I had at 7 years old had left me behind. So I remember going into the sanctuary. This is so funny. It's so sad. And going up to the altar and crying and looking up at a cross and praying that God would just come back and take me with him because I'm sorry I didn't mean, and I'm listing off all the sins I didn't apologize for and all the ones my parents didn't know. I'm crying. So imagine my relief that when my dad comes walking through the sanctuary doors after realizing that both my mom and him forgot. And okay, I've told this story to my parents, and I've learned that the reason why they forgot is because my twin brother and I, we used to play a game of which parent do we love more. And it was never like an actual game. It was just like if I love dad more, I'll go drive in his car. And if I love mom more, I'd go drive in her car. And sometimes both of us love dad more, so mom would have to drive by herself, and it was our way of punishing her. Like you don't get to hang out with us. We're gonna go and like so it was like unspoken, but it was spoken. Like they knew. By the way, our kids still do this. We just left my son's basketball game, and I had 2 out of 3 in my car, and I was like, I'm winning as a parent. Like it was good. And the one that wasn't in my car is the loud one, and I don't want him in my car anyways. So so I'll work for his love when he gets quieter, and it'll be good from there. But they had forgotten me and all this stuff. And my dad finds me curled up at the altar crying and all this stuff. And this was when I was really alone. So I still remember. This is a traumatic memory for me. As much as there's like a lot of, I still remember that time where I wasn't just lonely and I wasn't just forgotten. I was alone. There was nothing there for me. We all know the feeling of being alone, right? In some form, like for some of us, we know that feeling when we reach out to a friend and they just don't respond. Right? Anybody have read receipts on their text message and you could see when it's read just first delivered, and you're like, hey, it takes nothing to open up your phone, read a text message. Come on, husbands. Like just get it done. Just get back to me. Like, why are we paying for a phone if you're not going to use it? That's my question, Michelle. On behalf of Sam, that's my question, okay? That's all I want to know. We all know that feeling, right? We know the feeling of whenever all our friends they go out and do something and we see it on Instagram and we weren't a part of that, right? And there's just it feels lonely. It feels like alone a lot of those times. Or how about this? Some of us we're in a different phase of our adulthood and children have moved out. And what used to be filled with a lot of laughter and crying and noise is now just filled with what you have decided what new life looks like now. Man, that's a different stage of life. Those are different feelings and different ways to manage this. And here's the thing is I think if we could I want to bring us here. And I told that story because I want you guys to, as we talk about community versus loneliness, I want you to personify loneliness inside of you a little bit. I want you to personify a 7-year-old child curled up, crying, not thinking anyone is coming for them. If we were to really break it down, those moments that we feel really lonely, and we were to go and see that lonely feeling personified, I'm thinking it looks like that. Maybe that's just me, but roll with me today because when I say lonely, that's what I'm talking about. And when I say that the feeling of this and the desperation of why community is important is it's not simply just being alone and watching Netflix, it's that deep feeling that no one is coming for you. This is what we're fighting against. This is what we're trying to go against. I think if we were to look at that, we would see that some of our coping mechanisms come from trying to console that child. Some of our risky behaviors, our addictions, the fact that we can't sit in silence is because we would realize how quiet and lonely life really is. And so God wants to address this. He wants to look at this. You see, in my story, left behind in the church, forgotten by my parents, I didn't need food. I didn't need video games. I didn't need a positive mindset. I needed a person to be with me. I didn't need any of those things. I just needed a person. That feeling of loneliness that you carry came from somewhere, but it did not come from God. I need you to hear me. This is not God's plan. We've sat down and I've talked to a lot of people where they've tried to justify that feeling of loneliness as this is just a season that God is taking me through. He wants me to be lonely right now. I could not think of something further from the truth. There is nothing biblical about that idea. Do not justify what the enemy is doing for you of what God wants to do through you. So I just need you to hear that really quick. I need you because what we're doing is that like God's plan is for you never to be alone, but yet we still face loneliness. Now, like many of other God's plans, they don't go according to plan. God wants you to be blessed, yet how many of us feel blessed all the time? God doesn't want you to be alone, but many of us feel lonely. So what are we to do with this? What are we trying to do? Loneliness, it doesn't just stem from abandonment. It comes from a lot of different causes. For some, it can come from life transitions or financial struggles or marginalization like racism, sexism, ageism. All these things kind of push people into box and corners that they never wanted to be in, but they're kind of forced to be in right now. So in order to protect ourselves from further isolation, we put up walls, right? We keep people at an arm's distance, that we go, hey, honestly, at the time in which you probably put those walls up, which is when you were like 7, 8, 9, when those formative years where emotions are becoming very real and no one ever taught you how to process those out loud or gave you space because you were just whining and complaining. Come on, I know I'm speaking to some adults here in the room. Your emotions weren't validated and they needed to be. So let's do it now. Let's do the work. You put up walls and it was there to keep you safe. But the problem with walls is that they create a prison eventually. And the thing about these walls is that yes, no one can get in, but also no one can get out. So now over time, because you learned that walls work, you put them all around you instead of just the direction that was directly trying to harm you. But I need you to hear this is that you hold the key to your own freedom. God is trying to open a door. He's trying to create access. He's trying, if you can't tear down that wall, he'll put a door or a window or an escape hatch. He'll put something there, but it's still got to be your choice. He's not going to drag you out because you're going to drag yourself back in. It's got to be something that you walk out of. This has been Jesus' mission. At the beginning of his ministry, he comes out of a 40-day fast where the devil tempts him 3 times. And what he does immediately is not get a meal, is he walks to the local synagogue in Nazareth. He opens up the scroll of Isaiah, which we now know is the book of Isaiah, and he reads this. I'm going to look at Luke 4. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." Not just the financially poor, the poor in spirit. He has sent me to proclaim that the captives will be released, that the blind will see, that the oppressed, come on, will be set free. And that the time of the Lord's favor has come. And like a boss, he rolled up the scroll. This is like drop the mic like level. Handed it back to the attendant and sat down. All eyes in the synagogue looked at him intently, and he began to speak to him. The scripture you've just heard has been fulfilled this very day. I have great news. If he set the captive free 2,000 years ago, it's still free today. It didn't get locked back up. In fact, he's only been unlocking more and more and more and more. And now you get to be a part of the more process. When God talks about prosperity and blessing and abundance, this is what he's talking about. It's not about the individual, it's about the kingdom becoming free. You were captive, you were in enemy hands, you were a prisoner of war. And he didn't negotiate for your freedom, he ran to the camp and broke you out. But did you follow him? Did you go after him? Because what he was walking back to after he freed you was to his kingdom, full of people. You see, God's intent was always for community. He started maybe with Adam and Eve. Maybe he started with Abraham, but then that person, that individual turns into a family. That family turns into a community, and that community turns into a kingdom. This is God's movement, what he is trying to do. This is one of my favorite quotes. I just posted it on my Instagram stories because it popped up yesterday. But I love this from Pastor Rich, who wrote a book called The Deeply Formed Life. He says, "We are wounded in community, and we are healed in community. No way around it. Healing might not come from the community where the wounding took place, but community is needed for healing nonetheless." Some of your wounds from your family, from people of trust, maybe even from churches, came from those communities. But God's answer to your freedom and your healing is community itself. That's why it's so important that you find a community, I hope, like Dwell, that is going to help on that healing process. That is going to encourage, but also challenge. You see, walking into it and accepting a community of believers will need to be an active choice you make. It will feel awkward. There will be hiccups. There's going to be a time in which you stepped away from Dwell, and then you'll come back. And you'll be like, oh, it's going to be weird. Are they going to ask where I've been? Is this what? Stop. We're not going to do that. We're just excited you're here. That's it. But you have to still do it. Please let me encourage you. I know I'm speaking to the choir because you guys are here, but those listening, those watching, the people that you love, that you've invited and haven't come back yet, let them know you are needed here. I want to show you. I want you to meet my friends. A place like Dwell is filled with people that are led by grace, not situations. In one of Dwell's first messages, Pastor Natalie said it this way, in a way that only Pastor Natalie can. It's likely that the longer you've allowed yourself to be lonely, it has made you less desirable to be around. The quote goes on. That's okay. You've got some work to do. Quit waiting and get going. It's true. It's not a fun truth, but it's true. It's if you ever been in a teenager's bedroom, you know what the smell of loneliness. It is not desirable. Quit waiting, get going. We are part of this wonderfully complex thing called life. And you were put here not to serve yourself, but to use your resources to serve others. We've talked about that in previous weeks. Community gives you a place to do that. And it's time to get going. What's holding you back? Now, I can hear the inner monologues already. I'm not needed, or I'm not actually wanted. I'm too busy. If they knew me, like really knew me, they wouldn't want me. And what you don't know is that you are the missing piece in this community to make it whole. You are that important. Every time you're missing, it is felt. Paul puts it this way in 1 Corinthians. This is an add-on to the opening word that Pastor Natalie gave us. He says, but our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. How strange a body would be if it only had one part. Yes, there are many parts, but only one body. The eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. I love Paul's comparison of a community working together like a body works together. You are a member of the body of Christ. And God put you exactly where he wants to. So if you're missing, some of you, you're meant to be the voice of Dwell. But imagine the body without the tongue. Some of you are meant to serve and to do this through Dwell. But imagine the body that wants to serve but can't do it without their hand. This is what I'm talking about. Some of you are the strong foundations of families and churches and communities. But imagine the body without the leg. Not being able to support anything. So when we're missing you, we feel it. The body feels it. It knows that there's something supposed to be there. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but in medicine, there's a thing called phantom limb. Has anybody ever heard of this? It's the feeling that from if you've had let's just say an arm removed, amputated, that it's still there even though it's not presently there. It's because your brain still sends signals to the place where the arm is supposed to be. But then it comes back and says, nothing was there when I tried to send it there. This is what I mean. There are several churches in this world, including Dwell, that is just filled with phantom limbs. They're doing their work trying to be the center place in the body, but what is stopping them from growing is the signal of joy, the signal of love, the signal of peace, the signal of what could be is sent to that piece of the body, but there's nothing there to receive it. And we're caught up. So here's what we say in reference to us coming together: life is better shared. I've heard it explained this way. If I have three people, one has a beautiful kitchen, another has lots of groceries, and the last is a talented cook, each of them possesses the essentials for preparing a meal. But working independently makes creating a meal impossible. The kitchen owner seems ready to whip something up, but is unable to do so. The person with groceries appears set to provide a meal, but where can they use them? And the cook is eager to showcase their skills, but sadly lacks the space and supplies. All three have great resources, but no way to use them. When we share, we make something wonderful. This is why we start with this. Man, to be honest, if it's just good talking from Natalie and I or somebody else that comes up here, I don't want to do that. That's not shared. That's just me. And I could, now in an online world, I can just go talk to a camera and do that. And honestly, probably get a bigger followership that I could call a community and I could do all it, but it's just a false reality of what that is. But again, if this is my piece of the body, then how do we work together to do something amazing? I can only bring the supplies. Where are my cooks here? Right? Some of us, we love to host, and you got the kitchen, you got the home, and you're like, man, I'm just not a big talker. I don't need you to be a big talker to open up your home. I don't need you to be the best. I don't need you to be learned in all the ways of the Bible and be able to speak in tongues and do all this stuff. Do you have a space that people can dwell? Well, I'd have to clean. You might. Might be a reason to clean, though. I know it is for us. But let me warn you, even to this, the life is better shared. Don't share your resources with just anyone. Share with people who are looking to use the resources for the same purpose. The body works together for the same goal. Walking is falling forward. So the head and the upper body has confidence that the lower body is going to catch itself when it leans forward. We're in the same process of moving. So we work together. So whenever you go, oh, parts of my body have a completely different purpose. And so I may want to walk, but my left leg wants to sit, right? I know kids are crazy. Share with people who are looking to be on the same person. There are times when you share pieces to help others in need, but that in need that are not for the same purpose. But for many, we lost our resources and are now lonely because someone stole what God gave to us. And Jesus warns us about giving too much of ourselves to people not in a community purpose. He says this in Matthew chapter 7, don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. They will trample the pearls and then turn and attack you. Sadly, this has been used for churches to become more like cults, where it's no, I just don't give away resources to anybody. Please don't hear that. I'm saying don't give everything away. Don't give all of yourself to somebody who is also not giving all of themselves. There are relationships that we've been in where we have felt the burden that I am doing all of the work, but I'm not getting anything in return. A community of relationship is two-way street. It's both. We are moving in similar purposes. Please don't just give it to anybody. Some of us are passively doing this with some of our friend groups, right? where we go, oh yeah, I just like hanging out. But every time you hang out, it's about how much you drink, how much you smoke, how much you party, how much gossip, how much just all of the, I mean, and I can just go on and on about all the stuff that just takes from you and doesn't give out into the world. So then it's just this, like, it's not a meal. It's just slop. It's just, it's the worst of you coming out. Am I saying don't drink? No, that's just not the only purpose to hang out with people. But by the way, that's all a bar is. Well, that's where all my friends are. Ask them to meet at Applebee's next time. I don't know, like just try a different thing. And if they can't remove themselves from the environment that creates only slop, that's not a community. And that's barely a friendship. That's just a support group, maybe. I don't know. I'm convinced, I know my bias, but the best kind of community exists in the church. And that's not to say it hasn't been wrongly used. It absolutely has, over and over and over again. My story, your story, other people's story. But the track record does show us that among church attendees, depression rates are lower, divorce rates are lowering, adoption rates are rising, and the risk of poverty is reduced. This happens in this community, unlike any other community. There are communities that gather together like this, but nothing changes. They just come in and go out. But here, you could change. And not only that, passively, you will change. Just by showing up, you are more likely to reduce depression in your life. Not even further participation outside of showing up. You will become happier. What? And we have conversations all the time. All the time. I'm getting real vulnerable here. All the time with people saying they're going through some of the hardest stuff in the world and it is beating them down. This week, text message after text message, phone calls, one-on-one meetings. And what do we say at the end of every single time? I can't wait to see you this Sunday. In the hope that they might find some joy outside of me. I can only give so much. And even then, some days I got nothing. I got to come here. I got to hear Pastor Natalie preach because I can't preach it. We need each other. Are you guys seeing the importance of this community thing here? You see, community is about real connections in everyday moments. If you allow me, can I further challenge your idea of community? What many of us call a friend or a community is what I call a break in case of emergency person. We keep reliable people in reserved places in case something bad happens. When the bills stack up, when you lose your job, when you go through a breakup in a relationship, when you hit rock bottom, that's when you run over to your in case of emergency person. So I've had no relationship with a fire hose. I've had no relationship with a fire extinguisher, but I do have a relationship when there's a fire. When there's a fire, I look around and go, where's the thing that I put on the wall that I've never addressed until this fire is in danger of me? And that's how we treat most of our friends, but I think a lot of times our church community, right? Maybe even just how we treat Jesus is, man, life has gone to hell in a handbasket, and I was told to go back to this when things, and yes, do that, but don't just put the extinguisher back on the shelf when you're done. It saved you for a reason, and it will save you before the fire is going to occur again. You see, most of us are just in like we're trying to react to everything. But the Bible community is about prevention, not reaction. The best case scenario of us doing life together is that you are fighting fires that don't ever get lit. Come on, somebody. Where you're praying for that thing and you're going after it. And it's because you're not waiting for the next time to be broken. And this is what God is trying to offer you. Here's the question. Am I in community before I need community? So here's the challenge in front of us. Dwell seeks to be a place where We are there for highs and lows, all the things. And that's why we ask on these Connect cards to tell us what you're praying for. Tell us what you're celebrating. We want to do that with you. But I'm really, okay, if I can tell you one of my prayers that whenever I pray weekly for Dwell, I hope you know your pastor prays for you in this church and all that stuff. One of my prayers is someday we don't have to ask for prayers. Not because every prayer is solved, because it would be your natural reaction to a problem in your life, is I need someone to pray for me. Right now, and it's fine. We're in a season where I want to encourage you, pray. Let us pray with you. But man, I'm praying for that season where you naturally go, I know the place where this can be solved. I know the people who can pray for it. I know the people, because it got answered last time. Man, I'm believing it's going to be answered this time too. So we say this to wrap up where our statement on community, say we're committed to doing life together. So here's the thing. As we end this message, and we're gonna send this out to people so that they can be a part of it and they can understand this message. Again, I'm preaching a little bit to the choir here because you guys are awesome and you're showing up, and I'm so proud of you. It's great. It's very easy to sleep in. I almost did, and so. I really so desperately want this to be a 50-50 exchange. Here's the thing. I've done church where I had to put on some sort of face or persona of happy, or if I'm not strong, you can't be strong, and all that stuff. I don't want to do that. I really don't. And I like preaching and teaching, but I could give this up, but if it's us doing this together, if the only day I see you is on Sunday, so I only see you 4 days a month, that breaks my heart. And I don't want you to do this because you don't want to hurt somebody. I want you to do this because I hope it breaks your heart too, because when you're here, life gets better. It feels like you're connected. It feels like you're making the good choices. This might sound a little funny, but I don't mean it to be. But that feeling when you walk out of a gym early in the morning and you're like, I did it. And then there's an option for you to go on your daily routine of to go buy a cheeseburger or to eat, and you're like, I did this work in the morning. I don't want to waste it later. You did the work at the beginning of your week. Don't waste it later. Let it define some of the decisions that you're going to make later on. There's going to be an urge to get in an argument with your spouse today, for some of us, or with your kids. I know I'm going to have it. Again, I got a little terror in my house right now. I was telling you guys, I looked at my kid one time and I said, you cannot hold our family hostage anymore. It's coming. You're going to get, but you did some work today to set yourself on the path. What we want to do is we want to encourage other days other than just Sunday for that to happen more often. So we're expanding. We're trying to open up more opportunities with that. Will you be a part? Last week, Pastor Natalie talked about we're opening up this second group after Easter on Tuesdays. So even then, somebody's like, I can't do Fridays. I can't do Tuesdays. Okay, but when can you? And then will you open up your house? Will you make community happen? Because you need it. Will you make it happen for yourself? And will you let Dwell be the structure that helps make that easier for you? Please let us do that. Here, let me end right here, and then we're going to stand up and pray. Are you committed to community? Because this community is committed to you.